Welcome, everyone. Today we are hosting Savannah Lake. She is out of the library here at UNC Charlotte, and she is here to talk with all of us about research, publishing, how to share your research with others. So I'm going to hand it over to her. Savannah, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, thanks for having me. Like Suzanne said, my name is Savannah Lake. I'm the digital scholarship librarian here at Atkins Library. So I support a lot of our publishing and our open access services. So if you all ever have any questions on that, definitely feel free to reach out. But today what I'm going to talk about is Niner Commons. This is a service that the university provides that helps folks here at the university share and disseminate their research, and especially when thinking about uses for after college, we wanted to highlight how you can use this service to publish and share the research that you're doing right now with prospective employers, or if you're thinking about graduate school applications, how you can use it for that. So Niner Commons is basically, it's UNC Charlotte's online repository of scholarship. So what that means is if you're affiliated with the university, if you're a student here, if you're a faculty member or a staff member, and you're creating scholarship and you're doing research, you can post that within this website. And what that does is it makes sure that that research and scholarship is discoverable worldwide. So it's crawled by Google Scholar. So if someone is interested in that topic as well, or if they're doing their own research and they want to find resources and they're using Google Scholar, they'll be able to find what you put within Niner Commons. So that could mean, more eyes on your stuff. It could mean more citations, collaborations. It's just a great way to get what you're doing out there. But the other kind of key thing about Niner Commons as a service is that this website is basically an archival repository. So it means it's all about long-term access. So once you put something in here, it's not going to leave. You don't have to worry about it, things breaking down, pages changing, things like that. This is a long-term archival repository. So if, in 5, 10, 20 years, you're trying to find what you put in there, you're going to be able to find it. So it means once you leave UNC Charlotte, it's still, working for you and for your research interests. So as far as what students typically submit to the website, a lot of it is conference posters and papers. So, that could be conferences here at UNC Charlotte. If you're participating in the undergraduate research conference, it could be conferences elsewhere. But any sort of presentation from that or paper can go within Niner Commons. If you're working on an honors thesis or a capstone project, that is often submitted to Niner Commons. And if you're working on something with a faculty member, let's say you're in someone's research lab and you're co-authored on a journal article, that can also go within Niner Commons. And then for graduate students, theses and dissertations are automatically added to Niner Commons. You don't have to even do any extra steps on that. One thing to note is that because we are offering long-term archival preservation for this stuff, we're not able to accept everything. So if it's something that was created as kind of like part of a routine class or coursework, so if it's like a class assignment or a paper, that unfortunately we aren't able to promise that long-term access to it. But this list here is kind of the most common things that students are using Niner Commons for. That said, we know that scholarship can come in many different forms. We just had our first podcast submitted to Niner Commons. We've had recordings of theater performances. We had a grad student submit a documentary. So while this list is the most common of what we see, it's definitely not the only. So if you're doing any kind of other stuff, if you're making a zine or an art installation and you're wondering, how can I somehow preserve a copy of this and share it with others, definitely just reach out to me and we'll work on it and see what we can do. So really, the main benefit of Niner Commons is that it does showcase and share your research. And we already went over that it does this on a global scale by being indexed by Google Scholar. The other really key benefit it brings to you as a researcher is it creates permalinks for every object that's in the website. So this isn't a persistent link, this is a permalink. So once you kind of share it with others, you don't have to worry about it breaking down in the future. Some of you might have been here for when we did that transition from uncc.edu to charlotte.edu. Like, this sort of technical change can happen, but when you have a permalink, you don't have to worry about maintaining those links in that way. And we'll see how you can use links to update your CV or your portfolio to easily share this research. Again, the other key benefit it brings is the long-term permanent access. So as far as, let's say you have a digital portfolio and you're posting a PDF online of your work yourself, that's great. It's making it publicly available. But if you put it within Niner Commons as well, not only is it reaching an academic audience because it is, indexed by Google Scholar, but it also has a degree of permanence where you don't have to, for your website, let's say, continue to pay for the hosting. Or if you had linked to it from your Google Drive and you move folders within your Google Drive, you don't have to worry about that because it's permanently there for the long term. So it's a great way to really ensure long-term access to your work. So let's see the first example, especially if you're thinking about like life after UNC Charlotte, applying for jobs, and you want to show what your work product actually looks like. Niner Commons can be great for that because you can create these permalinks and add them to your resume or to your digital portfolio. And again, because they're reliable, like, this isn't something you're going to have to be updating every couple of years. And also, if you're thinking about graduate school, updating your CV with this information not only showcases your research and what you're capable of doing, but because these kind of services, Niner Commons is technically called an institutional repository, but institutional repositories, they're at every university. It's a common practice in a way of sharing your research. So already doing that before even being in grad school shows that you have knowledge of what academic research practices are and you're comfortable and fluent in them. But what this actually could look like is this is my digital portfolio that I made in grad school at the end of it when I was trying to find jobs. But the main thing here is this resume. So since I was looking for academic jobs, you'll notice that the CV is quite long. But the important part here is scholarship, right? Let me zoom in. So if you're publishing formally in like a journal, you're going to get a permalink like a DOI, which you can use right there. And again, like, reliably always have access to. But for a lot of the scholarship that doesn't have that sort of permanent access link right there, this is where Niner Commons can really come into play. So these are all conference presentations that I've given, but obviously I didn't get, my presentation formally published. So I submitted it to Niner Commons. And if you click that link, it brings you right to the page. So you can actually see the poster that I presented right here. If you scroll down, you can see stuff like how many views and downloads. And then right here is that permalink. So this is the link that I actually used to update my CV. But you can see the difference here of within your resume. Let's imagine, there were no hyperlinks and it was just a bulleted list of different presentations I've, given. That's great. But as for a future employer, it's so much more helpful for them to actually be able to click on the link and see what the work product looks like. And because I used a long-term repository like this, because the university offers it, I now no longer have to worry about updating it or maintaining it. As opposed to something like this is a poster presentation I gave before UNC Charlotte. So this is just hosted locally on my own website, which is fine. You know, it still shows what I've done. But unfortunately, if I no longer decide to host it or anything like that, I'm going to have to maintain that link more. So it's a really great way to showcase what you can do within your CV. And then kind of similarly, you can use Niner Commons in conjunction with an ORCID ID. So an ORCID ID is a persistent identifier that researchers often have to distinguish themselves from other researchers. So my name is Savannah Lake. I work in libraries. So all of my articles and my research, they're about libraries. But I'll often get emails from sites like academia.edu or ResearchGate saying, hey, there's this new paper on geology by Savannah Lake. Is that you? Or we found this new paper on computer science by Savannah Lake. Is that you? That's obviously not me. So that's where ORCID comes in. It's a way to publicly have a list of all my research and my work and say, I'm this Savannah Lake who does this. So if you look at it, it's totally free to sign up for. So you can get one. And if you search me, you can see the me here, but you can see for some people, like Thomas Lake, I guess, is a more common name. So there are 2 Thomas Lakes, but you can see that they have this information to kind of disambiguate them. But if you click here, within my profile, I can add things like I added a link to that same portfolio. I added some keywords just to show what my research interests are. I also added where I work and then what colleges I went to. Underneath here is my works again. So you can see these 2 are journal articles that were formally published. So they automatically update my ORCID. I didn't have to do anything. They're just there. But again, these are the conference presentations that, you know, make up my scholarship, and I want people to know that I've done it. But in order to actually share that information, I have to put it in Niner Commons first, which is helpful. So you can see here, this is a presentation I recently gave in Wisconsin, of all places. And if you click this, it brings you right to the poster again. So let's say, you know, you want a digital portfolio, but you don't want to go through the effort of creating a website and doing all the legwork here and hosting it and all that stuff. An ORCID is a really low lift way to create a digital portfolio of your work, you know, online, and you don't have to pay for anything or do anything like that. So in addition, I mainly use my ORCID for this kind of digital portfolio thing, but it was initially created with the thought of kind of, like I said, disambiguating researchers. So like the Savannah Lake in libraries versus the one in geology, but also for people who have name changes or different names, for them to be able to kind of aggregate all of their work in one spot. So Melanie here is a colleague of mine at the library, and she goes by Melanie Sorrell, but she used to go by Melanie Rambert. So what ORCID does is, when she was publishing under this former name, it aggregates that work, but it also has her current name. So that's just another kind of key use case for this service. And definitely, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to chat or interrupt me, and there will be plenty of time at the end as well. So how this actually works, if you're interested in maybe you have some stuff and you want to submit to potentially update your resume or create an ORCID and update that as well, you would go to ninercommons.charlotte.edu and you would click submit work. And we have streamlined the form to make it as quick as possible. So basically you just put your name, you would say what your affiliation is, if you're a student, your email address, and then the name of the work. I'm just going to do test 1. You upload it. That was PDF. I mean, a Word doc. It wants a PDF. So let's do this one. And then you have this license agreement that you can agree to. This basically just says you're the author, you're not plagiarizing, you know, you're not being forced to do this, you don't have confidential information in here, kind of like your standard licensing stuff. But if you have any questions about this, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm happy to go over it. And then you confirm that you are not a robot, and then you click submit. And that's all it takes. And then I would, on the back end, receive your submission and then make it live and let you know. But that is the presentation. I'm definitely open to any questions you all might have.
Like I said in the chat, whether it's Niner Commons based or ORCID or any question just about research, maybe even how to gain research, please ask questions around that while you have Savannah here with us, who's an expert. Man, this is exciting. I've not heard about ORCID, so that is really, really great. Do you find a lot of faculty using that as well?
Yeah, it varies by department and kind of by discipline. But yeah, if you are publishing, it's a good thing to have one to really have a record of your work.
That's great. In the chat, Sydney asks, how long of a process is it for research to be uploaded into Niner Commons?
Yeah, so you saw on your end how long it takes, which isn't too long to submit the form. Once it gets to my end, I am like a one-person show here, but I try to get things in by the end of the work week. So let's say you submit it on a Monday, it should be there by the end of the week. But you can always check in with me if you're like, I really need this in right now, like always follow up. But some days it's within, you know, within an hour, it's live. Some days it would be till the end of the work week.
That's a good question. Let's see. Tori asked, how long is the process of creating an ORCID? I think you've answered Niner Commons, but feel free to speak to that again.
Yeah, so ORCID, I believe, is very quick. I made mine once I joined UNC Charlotte. So that was about 2-3 years ago. But you just self-register and then fill it out. So I believe it's a fairly quick process. And then for Niner Commons, you don't need a profile to submit. You just need to submit through that form. So that one's also very straightforward.
So with ORCID, you don't have to use a NinerNet or anything. It's separate from the Atkins Library. It's just on your own, basically.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. And you can associate multiple email addresses with it, which I recommend. So I have, you know, my charlotte.edu email address associated, but I also have my personal Gmail just in case, you know, I do leave UNC Charlotte. I can easily update my ORCID in the future.
No, that's great. Do you have any recommendations for students in general about how to go about doing research on campus? Like what kinds of recommendations would you give based on some of the things you're seeing for Niner Commons?
I think the Office of Undergraduate Research has a lot of great resources on this. They have their annual conference that you can get involved with, and I think a summer symposium, but they also publish a undergraduate research journal here on campus that you can submit to. So I think they'd be a great place to start with for more opportunities.
Okay. And Tori also asked, is there a resource for graduates to upload all of their Google Drive content to another location to access?
So this would be kind of all working documents.
So more just any kind of projects, Tori?
Yes, hi, good morning, afternoon. So any kind of projects, Google Docs, maybe content we worked on over our course time. So just transferring all that information.
Definitely. Yeah, so we are able, Niner Commons is able to take kind of like capstone projects and like theses and journal articles and conference presentations. So we could be a resource for that sort of work that we could work with you. But any sort of supporting documentation or files for more classwork like term papers or assignments, we wouldn't be able to take that in. We would love to, but unfortunately, because we are offering this like long-term permanent archival access, thinking like storage-wise, we just can't offer that to everyone. So I would kind of think IT would be someone to think about as far as like where to transfer those files to in the future, what opportunities there might be there.
Savannah, is ORCID a place where individuals could put items like that? Or is that, again, more for the projects, the capstone projects, theses, et cetera?
It is, I think, more for the latter type of work. And it is more like kind of like a research-based LinkedIn. It's kind of like a list of everything you've done. So you couldn't store files there the same.
Okay. I will say that for those of you who do have just, I would say regular projects, things that you're really proud of that you're doing in class, you can store some of those things on LinkedIn. So for instance, if you go into LinkedIn under your education for UNC Charlotte, it actually gives you the option to upload media. And so whether it be, a paper or a link that you've done or a video, or it's very open actually to types of format. Check that out. And that could also just be an additional resource if you have those papers that are not really part of a capstone or a thesis level quality. All right, any additional questions? And obviously you have Savannah's email, so feel free to reach out to her anytime about maybe a project you're working on and whether that would be applicable to Niner Commons or not.
Definitely. Yeah, if questions come up in the future, I'm always around, so definitely feel free to reach out.
Any final questions before we wrap up here? All right, well, I'm not seeing anything else coming in. So Savannah, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. You always teach me something new, so thank you. And students, I really do hope that you take advantage of this amazing opportunity. I mean, this is basically a free portfolio platform to showcase your work forever. So what an amazing resource that the library is offering. So definitely take advantage of this. And if we can help you move forward in finding those research opportunities, feel free to come by the Career Center and we'll do our best to help you get connected. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.